What if I told you that Canada almost didn't survive its first 20 years? In the late 1800s, the country was young, divided, and dangerously fragile. The land was enormous, but its people were scattered thousands of kilometers apart. Traveling from east to west could take weeks, sometimes even months. There was no fast, reliable way to hold the new nation together. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an existential threat. Out on the west coast, British Columbia felt completely cut off by the impenetrable barrier of the Rocky Mountains. For people in places like Victoria, San Francisco felt a lot closer and more connected than Ottawa. This sense of isolation was a serious problem, especially with our southern neighbors. At the same time, American railways were aggressively pushing westward, and their tracks were getting closer and closer to the Canadian border. There was a very real fear that the United States could simply absorb Canada's western lands before the young country even had a chance to secure them. The dream of a nation stretching from sea to sea was at risk of dying before it truly began. So, when British Columbia agreed to join the Canadian Confederation in 1871, they laid down a non-negotiable condition. It wasn't a suggestion or a hopeful request. It was an ultimatum. A railway had to be built to connect them to the rest of the country within 10 years. This wasn't just for show. It was a lifeline. Without this physical link, the promise of a united Canada was empty, and the new province was prepared to walk away. The entire Confederation experiment hung in the balance, all depending on a line of steel that didn't yet exist. Canada had made a promise it had no idea how to keep. Building this railway was an almost unimaginable challenge. The proposed route crossed thousands of kilometers of punishing terrain. It had to conquer the endless, empty prairies, navigate the dense, untamed forests of the Canadian Shield, cross powerful, frozen rivers, and, most daunting of all, blast through the towering, solid rock of the Rocky Mountains. Many engineers at the time looked at the landscape and believed it was simply impossible. They argued that the technology of the 19th century was no match for the raw power of the Canadian wilderness. It was a project of breathtaking ambition, one that would push the limits of human ingenuity and endurance. Almost immediately, the project was plagued by problems. The first and biggest hurdle was money. The cost was astronomical, far beyond what the young country could easily afford. This financial strain led directly to political crises. The Pacific Scandal of 1873 erupted when it was revealed that the Prime Minister S. Party had taken bribes in exchange for the railway contract. The government collapsed. Public trust was shattered, and the railway project ground to a halt. 4 years, construction stalled. Deadlines were missed. More étonnant, the entire venture stood on the very edge of collapse, and with it, the promise made to British Columbia. And here's the part of the story that most people don't realize. By the early 1880s, the 10-year deadline was looming, and Canada was running out of time. The project was hopelessly behind schedule, massively over budget, and teetering on the brink of complete failure. If construction stopped for good, British Columbia was almost certain to leave Confederation. This wouldn't just be an embarrassment. It would be a fatal blow. The United States was watching closely, ready and willing to expand north into the vacuum left by a fractured Canada. At this critical moment, this wasn't just about building a railway anymore. This was a desperate fight to hold the country together. Faced with this national emergency, the government made a final move. In 1881, a new private company, the Canadian Pacific Railway, was formed and given enormous grants of land and money to finish the job at all costs. The race was back on, and construction accelerated at a frantic pace. But this speed came at a terrible human price. The railway was built on the backs of more than 30,000 workers. Many were European immigrants seeking a new life, but thousands were Chinese laborers, recruited specifically for the most difficult and dangerous tasks. These Chinese workers were paid a fraction of what others earned, sometimes as little as $1 a day. They were handed the most perilous jobs, like blasting tunnels through solid mountain rock with notoriously unstable nitroglycerin explosives. They worked brutally long hours in extreme weather, from scorching summer heat to bone-chilling winter cold, often with inadequate food and shelter. Accidents were constant. Landslides, explosions, and disease claimed countless lives. It's estimated that for every mile of track laid through the treacherous Fraser Canyon, at least one Chinese worker died. They sacrificed their health and their lives, yet their contribution was largely ignored for decades. Despite the immense cost in both money and lives, the railway pushed relentlessly forward, mile by grueling mile, spike by heavy spike. The two ends of the track, one moving west from the prairies, the other east from the Pacific, drew closer. Finally, on the morning of November 7th, 1885, in a remote spot in the mountains of British Columbia called Craigellachie, the final spike was driven into place. It wasn't a golden spike, but a simple iron one, hammered in by one of the railway's directors. With that one final clang of metal on metal, Canada was physically united from coast to coast. A journey that once took months of arduous travel could now be completed in a matter of days. If you're finding this story interesting so far, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these hidden and crucial moments in history. So, what did this railway actually change? The impact was immediate and profound. Almost overnight, the West was opened up. Towns and cities sprang up along the tracks, where nothing had existed before. Hundreds of thousands of settlers poured into the prairies, drawn by the promise of land and a new life. Trade exploded, as grain from the West could now be shipped efficiently to ports in the East and then to the rest of the world. Most importantly, the railway solidified Canada's claim to its western territories, effectively ending the threat of American expansion. It secured the country's borders and transformed the abstract idea of Canada into a tangible, connected reality. But this transformation came with a dark side. The railway's path cut directly through the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. Treaties were hastily signed, often misunderstood, and rarely honored. The vast herds of bison, central to the life and culture of the Plains First Nations, were decimated to make way for tracks and settlements. Indigenous communities were displaced, forced onto reserves, and their traditional ways of life were permanently disrupted. The very railway that united one version of Canada also served as an instrument of colonization and division for its original inhabitants. It reshaped the land and its people forever, leaving a complex and often painful legacy. Today, more than a century later, the echoes of that great railway project are all around us. Modern freight and passenger trains still thunder along routes that were first surveyed and blasted out of the wilderness in the 19th century. Many of our major cities, trade networks, and even our provincial boundaries owe their existence to that single line of steel stretching across the continent. The Transcontinental Railway was never just a transportation project. It was a monumental gamble that forged a nation. It was a story of vision and ambition, but also one of scandal, hardship, and immense sacrifice. Without it, the map of North America would almost certainly look very different today. The tracks laid in 1885 were the threads that stitched a country together, and in many ways, they still hold Canada in place.
If you enjoyed this video, follow my socials for short videos and full stories on YouTube. Like and subscribe.